guys, welcome to QuaranTEEN Cooking. I wanted to get on and do a class focused on roasting vegetables because I feel like there's this idea that a lot of people don't like vegetables, and I think it has everything to do with how you cook them. And I think I can make a vegetable lover out of pretty much anyone, but you need to know how to do them deliciously. And so the inspiration for the recipe I'm going to do today, I'm not doing the exact recipe, but there's a chapter in Prep, and the chapter is actually called How to Cook Vegetables You Want to Eat. And this is a roasted broccoli, and it is one of my kids' favorite ways to eat broccoli. So I just happen to have a little bit of broccoli today, just two little guys, and then I also have a small head of cauliflower. So I thought I would just show you how I roast these guys and just talk about sort of the concept in general about roasting vegetables, because practically any vegetable lends itself to being roasted, and it makes it for a really delicious way to eat them. So I'll just show you, some people look at a head of broccoli or a head of cauliflower and don't even know where to begin. So what I usually do is I kind of get in here. There's a little bit of core and some leaves. And I usually just kind of start by lopping that off. I actually really like the cauliflower leaves, so I'll often just throw those on the sheet pan along with everything else. And then you've got sort of all these little florets, and I usually just take a knife and come in here and kind of pop the florets off, like that. And what you kind of want to do in general, and I like to use a little paring knife for this, you kind of, when you're roasting, what you want to think about is trying to have all of your pieces about the same size. It's impossible to have it perfectly so, but if you have a little tiny piece of cauliflower and a great big piece of cauliflower, one's going to be done much more quickly than the other, and you want to try to keep it fairly uniform. So I'm just going to keep these kind of about this size. Sometimes I'll do them really tiny if I want it to cook really quickly. So then I'm just going to pile those onto the sheet pan. You saw how quickly that went, just like that. And then you can eat this bit of core, so I usually will just kind of trim it out and slice it and add it. So there's our cauliflower, and then we've got our broccoli. And again, these little leaves, they'll crisp up a lot quicker than the broccoli, but they're delicious. A lot of people just eat the florets, but the stem of the broccoli is also perfectly edible, and I think it's the kind of sweetest part of the whole vegetable. So what I usually do is just cut the florets off like that, and then, again, I'm saving those tender little leaves. And then the outside of this is really fibrous and coarse, so I take a little paring knife and I just kind of cut off the exterior, and you get that tender inside bit. You can actually eat this raw. I mean, you could eat all broccoli raw. I don't particularly like the florets raw, but I think this is tasty also. Okay, so that I'm putting on. And then same thing with the cauliflower. We're kind of just going to try to aim for everything being about the same size. And I go in here again with my knife. Sometimes you'll get a big piece like that, and I'll just kind of cut it in half and just throw all those guys on. This one has just a little bit of stalk, so I'll just quickly come around here. Broccoli and cauliflower are incredibly nutritious. They're a member of what's called the cruciferous vegetable family, and they just have a reputation for being kind of nutrient powerhouses. So the more of these kinds of vegetables you can eat, the better. But just generally speaking, a lot of times people will ask me, oh, well, what's the most nutritious vegetable, or what's the most nutritious fruit? And my philosophy is just eat it all, eat a variety, eat color, try new things. And this particular technique, this roasting, it lends itself to you doing all kinds of vegetables. So so I put it right on my sheet pan, and then you want to, if you're using different vegetables, you can mix them all up. Like for example, these two vegetables tend to cook at about the same rate. But if I was doing a really tender vegetable that cooks quickly, like zucchini, in the same sheet pan as like a potato, I would keep them separately, because partway through that zucchini is going to be done and you can scoop it off. So the other thing to note is you don't want your pan really any more crowded than this. You can see you could probably get a little more on here, but you want there to be space because you want the air to circulate, and I like the vegetables to get really nice and kind of caramelized and brown, and if they're all bunched together, they'll sort of more steam and you won't get that appealing brown. But I piled them on initially together, and then I'm going to put probably for this amount, maybe a tablespoon, this is extra virgin olive oil, put that on. I'm going to put probably, I'm guessing, that's probably like a heaping quarter teaspoon, maybe a little more, and then some fresh black pepper. And what you can always taste it, like, so get this all mushed up, taste it. If it tastes good, you can always add more salt later. And I just use my hands and coat it. So you want each piece kind of lightly coated in olive oil. And that's part of, it gives it great flavor. So it's just one of my like go-to easy ways to make vegetables. I'm going to put that in the oven at 425 until it's done. And then when I come back, I'll tell you how long it took. So I think it's probably been about, I don't know, 17 or 18 minutes, and our veggies are done. I'm going to pull them out of the oven. They are nice, and you can see there's some brown kind of caramelization on there. They're still tender, they're not mushy, but I love it when it's sort of, you've got that going on. It makes it really kind of yummy and addictive. So I'm going to just set that there. I wanted to show you another little side dish or a little sauce that I often make with all kinds of roasted vegetables. It's a really popular recipe on my blog, Mom's Kitchen Handbook, and I will include a link to the actual recipe, but I'm just going to talk you through it. It's a lemon tahini dressing. And if you're not familiar with tahini, it comes in a container, it's sold kind of shelf stable, and it's basically what peanut butter is for peanuts. It's sesame seeds is basically ground up and made into tahini. So it's an ingredient that you'll find in a lot of Middle Eastern and some Mediterranean cooking. If you've ever had hummus, you've probably had tahini because it's a pretty core ingredient in a traditional hummus. And I have already in here a quarter cup, and it's got kind of an earthier, more bitter flavor relative to a lot of nut butters, and it's runnier. So I've measured a quarter cup in here already. I'm going to add quite a bit of lemon juice to this, and I wanted to show you another method for squeezing lemons. I know I showed you the juicer, but not everybody has that. So what I will do often is I'll cut a lemon in half, and I think sometimes lemons and especially limes can be kind of stubborn to get that juice out, and I just stick my fork in there, and it kind of helps get all that lemon juice out. And just kind of rock it back and forth like that. And then we're looking for a quarter cup. So I'm going to add that to my tahini here, and I'm going to use my fork because there's a bunch of little seeds that have gone in there. So I'm going to just kind of use my fork to prevent the seeds from dropping in, like that. Okay? The other thing that I'm going to put in here is a little bit of garlic. So I just have a small clove, it's already peeled, and usually what I do is I just kind of go along quickly like this with my garlic, go through it, then I turn it, and you want your garlic pretty finely minced, so just back and forth until you have it nice and tiny, like so. Alright, and then I'm just going to scrape that right in here as well. Put that aside. I'm going to whisk that in. And because tahini is, as I said, kind of bitter, I like to put a little bit of sweetness. So I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of honey. And eyeballing it. You can measure, but I've probably done this like 100 times. So, and what's kind of interesting is I find when I do this, the tahini kind of magically thickens. I don't understand it. So it's interesting to work with. It's as if it you know, I don't know, absorbs. So just adding that, it's immediately become kind of this luscious texture. The other thing I like to add to this is some cumin and coriander. So again, these are spices that are common in Middle Eastern cooking. You'll also find cumin in other cuisines. Lots of Mexican dishes have cumin in it. I don't actually have coriander, so I'm just going to use cumin, and I'm just using it half a teaspoon. And I just bought, I've ran out of cumin, and it's amazing when you buy fresh spices, they really smell. So if your spices have been sitting on your shelf for a long time, I mean, I know some people have had spices for like 5 years, you might want to give them the sniff test, and if you're not smelling a whole lot, it might be time to replace them. Some people say replace your spices every 6 months. I don't really think arbitrary, I don't know, deadlines for spices really apply, and I think that would get awfully expensive, but I do think it's worth kind of checking out if you have spices you don't use very often. The other thing I like is little containers like this, because if you get a great big bottle, that can take a long time to kind of go through. Okay, so we've got our garlic, we've got our tahini, we've got our lemon, we've got our honey. We're going to add some salt. So this is kosher salt. I'm just adding half a teaspoon here. And the last thing is, because this is kind of thickened up and you want it to really drizzle, I'm going to, olive oil, I forgot. So I'm going to see what this looks like, but usually I add about a 1/4 cup of olive oil. And that's what's going to give it a nice drizzly texture. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of water. I know the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons, but it really depends on kind of how your sauce ends up. So I'm going to maybe add a little, maybe that does need all 2 tablespoons, we'll see. All right, so I've got that whisked together. It smells good, it's nice and creamy, which is what you want. And then what I like to do, this makes a fair amount, is I like to just put it in a jar, because I'm probably not going to eat all of this in one sitting. The other thing about tahini is, like all the nut butters and seed butters, it's really nourishing. It's a source of protein. There's some calcium in there. There's some other minerals and nutrients. And it's just got kind of an interesting flavor. So we've got that, and then you can sort of just throw a lid on that and store that in your fridge and have it. And then we're going to I'm going to show you how I would serve this at home. So get a plate or a shallow dish plate, that all works. And then just kind of scoop this onto your plate. And again, you could be doing this with sweet potatoes or carrots or regular potatoes or a combination. All of those would be really good in this, using this method and with the tahini dip. So we've got our pretty veggies. You can see that yummy those little broccoli leaves. And then I might just serve this kind of on the side. And if you wanted, you could just put, maybe we'll do that, a little extra drizzle of lemon. And that's kind of what it looks like, your roasted veggie platter. And this, again, this is really like just a plate of nourishment, but it's also just really delicious. You know what? I'm just going to add a little more water. I'm looking a little more. Stir that up. And then I usually just let people put their own dressing on at the table, but I just want to try this. So just put a little drizzle, pick it up. It is so good. I love when you find a dish that is so good for you, but is so delicious that you want to eat the whole platter. So I hope you try it. I would love to see how you like cooking vegetables this way, and especially for those of you who aren't sort of historically veggie lovers, to see if this is a way that you might like them a little bit better. So see you next time.